For decades, one company told America's farmers a brutal truth. You may own your land, you may own your crops, but you do not own your tractor. Now, after a sweeping antitrust crackdown under the Biden administration and a federal judge's sharp rebuke, that power is being challenged. John Deere now faces a $4.2 billion lawsuit, a legal battle that threatens its iron grip on rural repair. The headlines talk about courtrooms. But the real damage didn't begin with lawyers. It began in fields, where crops withered while machines sat silent for weeks. This is the story of how a repair monopoly pushed generations of farmers to the edge. And what happens when ordinary people finally fight back in federal court. For farmers, a broken machine isn't an inconvenience. It's a countdown. A countdown measured in hours of daylight, in weather windows that never reopen, in soil conditions that won't wait for permission. When a tractor goes down, the field doesn't pause. The season doesn't slow. And nature doesn't care about service schedules. A single missed day can mean acres left untouched. A missed week can erase an entire harvest. And by the time repairs are finished, the damage is already permanent. This is the quiet crisis playing out across rural America. In the Midwest, farming is not a job. It's a chain passed from one generation to the next. Land cleared by grandparents, fields expanded by parents, and futures built on the assumption that hard work would be enough. But modern farming has changed the rules. Today's tractors are no longer just steel and engines. They are computers on wheels, filled with sensors, encrypted systems, and software locks. And the key to all of it belongs to one company, John Deere. When something breaks on a modern Deere machine, the problem is often not mechanical. It's digital. A sensor trips. A control unit loses calibration. A security code locks the system into limp mode. The tractor still looks fine. The engine still runs, but it refuses to work. Not because it can't, but because it's not authorized to. That authorization comes from a single piece of software. Service Advisor. It is the only tool capable of unlocking critical systems, pairing new parts, and resetting the electronic controls that keep these machines running at full power. And farmers don't have it. Independent mechanics don't have it. Only John Deere's authorized dealers do. This changes everything. Because once repairs are controlled, time is no longer in the farmer's hands. It belongs to the queue. A breakdown doesn't happen on a calm day. It happens when the weather is finally right, when the soil is ready, when the window is open, and that window is small. Miss it by a day, and the yield drops. Miss it by a week, and the season starts slipping away. A farmer watches the forecast every morning. Rain is coming, then heat, then wind. Each day matters, but the tractor is gone, sitting behind a fence, waiting for approval, waiting for a technician. At home, the math begins. Seed has already been bought. Fertilizer is paid for. Fuel prices are locked in. None of that stops. Loans don't pause because a machine is down. Interest doesn't wait for a service call. Neither do school fees, or medical bills, or property taxes. So farmers start making choices they shouldn't have to make. Plant fewer acres. Use less fertilizer. Delay repairs somewhere else. Every decision cuts into yield. Every cut shrinks the margin, and the margin is already thin. For many families, one bad season is manageable. 2 is dangerous. 3 is the end. Land gets leased out. Equipment gets sold. Dreams quietly disappear. Not with a crash, but with paperwork, and the hardest part. The repair itself was never impossible. The knowledge was there. The part was there. The experience was there. What was missing was permission. This is why farmers say they don't just lose time. They lose control. Control over their schedule. Control over their income. Control over land that's been in their families for generations. And once control is gone, everything else follows. For years, farmers tried to solve this quietly. They talked to dealers. They asked for access. They asked for tools. Not to break the system, just to keep working. Most weren't asking for shortcuts. They weren't asking for free repairs. They were asking for the right to fix what they already owned. Some turned to local mechanics, people who had repaired farm equipment for decades, people who understood engines, hydraulics, and harvest deadlines. But even they hit the same wall. A part could be replaced, a sensor could be changed, and still the tractor wouldn't move. Because the machine didn't recognize the repair. The screen would flash a warning. Power would drop. Functions would shut down. Not because something was broken, but because the software hadn't been cleared. And without that clearance, the tractor refused to work. This is where frustration turned into anger. Because the fix was right there, visible, affordable, but locked. Farmers began to realize something unsettling. This wasn't about safety. It wasn't about quality. It was about control. The longer the wait, the clearer it became. If only one group is allowed to repair, then that group sets the price. If only one group has the tools, then everyone else waits. And waiting, in farming, is the most expensive option of all. By the time a technician arrived, the damage was already done. Fields planted late, crops stressed, yields reduced. Losses that would never show up on a repair invoice. And slowly, something changed. Private complaints turned into public meetings. Local frustration turned into organized pressure. Farmers who rarely agreed on anything began agreeing on this. The system was broken. They weren't fighting for convenience. They were fighting to survive. That's when the issue left the fields and entered the courtroom. When farmers finally spoke up, they didn't use legal language. They used stories. Stories of seasons lost, of harvests missed by days, of machines sitting idle while debt kept moving. Those stories reached Washington, and they didn't sound small. In January 2025, the Federal Trade Commission stepped in, joined by state attorneys general. Their message was direct. If a company controls the tools needed to fix essential equipment and refuses to share them, then competition disappears. Choice disappears, and the people at the bottom pay the price. The case wasn't about one broken tractor. It was about a system. A system where farmers owned the machine, but not the means to keep it running. A system where delays were guaranteed, and alternatives didn't exist. In court filings, the government argued that repair had become a choke point. Control the software, and you control the timeline. Control the timeline, and you control the farmer. The company pushed back. They said farmers already had options. They said innovation required limits. They said the system was fair. But in the fields, the reality looked different. Because fairness doesn't look like waiting weeks while crops sit unplanted. Fairness doesn't look like paying premium prices with no alternative. And innovation doesn't mean removing the right to fix. As the case moved forward, something important happened. Farmers felt seen, not as customers, not as users, but as people whose livelihoods depended on decisions made far from their land. The fight was no longer private, it was public. And it was growing. Across farming communities, the question changed. It was no longer, can I fix this machine? It became, why am I not allowed to? And once that question is asked, there's no going back. This fight is no longer just about tractors, it's about control. About who decides, when a farmer works and when he waits. Around the world, farmers are pushing back. Not against technology, not against progress, but against a system that takes ownership without taking responsibility. Because when a farmer can't repair his own machine, he doesn't just lose time, he loses independence. And when independence is gone, farming stops being a way of life. It becomes a permission-based business. Courts will decide the law. Governments will debate policy. But the real outcome will be felt, far from courtrooms, in fields, in harvests, in families trying to survive one more season. So here's the real question. Not for judges, not for corporations, for you. Should the people who feed the world have the right to fix the machines they own? Or should that power remain locked behind software and corporate approval? Because once repair becomes a privilege, ownership becomes an illusion. If you believe farmers deserve the right to repair, comment below. And if you want to understand The systems that quietly control our lives. Subscribe. Thanks for watching.